All right. Good morning. Let's make sure we got everything working right here. And then we're going to go ahead and get started.
All right. Good morning.
That sounds perfect. Shut that off.
And then we'll go ahead and get started.
Okay. I'm having feedback problems. Hang on one second. Okay, got that taken care of. All right. My name is David Hopkins, and I am with Network Designs, and I am going to try and explain today the changes that were made in Jira and Confluence regarding our new upgrade. So we've got quite a bit of data to cover. I'm going to go ahead and get rolling right now. If you have any questions, as usual, you can type them straight into the YouTube chat window. They'll come right up on my screen. I'll answer them directly. And that should take care of that. All right, so without any further lollygagging, let me get my presentation up. And kick over to share my screen. And we should be good to go. Okay, so again, David Hopkins with Network Designs Incorporated. And what we're going to talk about today is what's new in Jira and Confluence in regards to the upgrade path that we just took as a company. So we're going to talk a little bit, this is the agenda, we're going to talk a little bit about the purpose, some general changes, some specific Jira changes, Confluence and Bitbucket changes, and then I'm going to give you the opportunity to ask any questions. I'm also going to try and run through a couple of the elements on the actual Jira instance and the Confluence instance. So hopefully we'll be able to demonstrate a few things, or at least show you where to find the new information. Okay, so the purpose is basically, the brief overview anyway, is that the majority of what's happened is that the version of Confluence and Jira that we were using, 6.4.5, this version was specifically designed to migrate from Atlassian's hosted environment onto your own hosted environment, your personal corporate hosted environment. So that version 6.4.5 and 5.9.0 on Confluence, those versions were not meant to be production versions. They were meant to be transfer versions. And then immediately after we made that migration, we were supposed to then go and upgrade to the next available commercial version. We didn't get that. We didn't understand that. It didn't happen until, and we didn't understand it until about 6 months after, when we had a problem. And I went back to Atlassian to get the answer, and the answer was, we can't really help you because you're on an unsupported version. Well, fast forward 2 years, and we had very few problems. That's how good Jira and Confluence are. We had very few problems making everything we need work. And we just got to the point over the Thanksgiving holiday where we were able to upgrade. And the upgrade path, as you see, was pretty substantial, from 6.4 to 7.6 and from 5.9 to 6.5. We also upgraded Stash from 3.1 to 5.5. And in that process, Stash's name even changed. So rolling straight into it, some of the changes you're going to see are the top bar menu. They've reduced the items. This is in Jira. They've simplified access into all aspects of the system. So when you're looking for something, everything is easier to find. And the projects in Jira and in Confluence, the drop downs for projects in Jira and spaces in Confluence are remarkably different. So it really does. They've accumulated everything into there. For example, in the top bar menu, there is no longer a service desk drop down. with a list of service desks. So you'll see that in a few minutes, and you'll see how to find your service desk. It's right in the projects list. There was no real reason to have two full separate lists. The project sidebar. When you're in your project, the sidebar is different. It's compressed. It is cumulative, so things are rolled up into other things where it makes sense. And the sidebar stays the same for the most part through all views of the project. So if you're working with sprints versus the root versus epics, if you're in a board, the sidebar is always still going to be there. They've made changes to the project templates. So these are the defaults, templates that are being provided when you create a new project. This includes new workflows and a default issue type, which is pretty nice. Up to this point, there wasn't a default issue type. You had to specify which issue type you used when you created the ticket. So what we did as an organization, when we designed the flow and the layout of the boards and the service desks, for example, we built them prompting the user for the type of ticket they wanted to create. So they wouldn't just pop open a ticket and then choose which type it is in a drop-down box. We said, do you want to create a user incident or a bug or a project change or whatever? That was all done in that prompt. That's no longer necessary for some of the pieces where you just want to say, create a ticket. I know it's going to be a bug, or whatever default you need for your particular project, you can just set that. In the Kanban scenario, excuse me, the epics and the versions panels are now static. Now you can still accordion them and expand and minimize them on the left, but they're always going to be there, which is very nice when you're working in the backlog, because now you can also drag and drop. If you want to associate a case with an epic or a version, you can just drag it over there, drop it right on that epic, and it's automatically incorporated into that epic or version. You can still do it the old way where you are opening the ticket and you're choosing the dropdown for this epic or this version or whatever, or type it in or however you previously did it, depending on the form that you built. But having it as a drag and drop right in the backlog makes it really easy, because you, just like before, you were able to drag to create your sprint. Now you can take that whole associated group and throw it right into an epic or right into a version. So the epics panel is no longer viewed as cards, it's now viewed as a list, which makes it look just like the versions panel and the sprints panel, which is a good thing. You can also set sprint goals now. In the sprint goals, what you're looking for here, or what you've got is you've got a, primarily it's a text field that you can set to whatever you'd like. And once you have that set, it's basically the goal for that particular sprint. And it's a goal, of course, that the entire team has agreed upon, and it gives them the ability to see it right in front of their face every day without it just being a meeting component in the backdrop. It's now physically represented right on the screen. All right, there we go. There we go. Okay. You can now rename and delete sprints. I know, I can hear the fanfare in the background already. So renaming and deleting sprints has been a difficult thing to do in the past. You couldn't rename and you could only delete if you were an administrator on the project, and so on and so on. So now renaming and deleting is a piece of cake. When working with planning your team's workload, and their velocity, whether it's done in a points value scenario or whether it's done in an hours scenario, it depends on how you're building your project. Here at NDI, we typically are using points or Fibonacci style scale. But you can look at, when you're looking at the workload of an assignee, one of the employees, you can also look at the time to complete. So you can see that based on their current workload, it's going to take them X amount of days / hours. Oops. Somehow I fat fingered my keyboard here. There we go. It's going to take them X amount of days / hours to be able to complete their current workload. So a very handy roll-up, if you will, a cumulative value for the workload that you've assigned to one of your employees. The next thing is priority schemes. Priority schemes are pretty sweet. Just like everything else in Jira, you have schemes. Now, the schemes basically are a plan. Okay, so you can have a rights scheme. So it's the way that the rights will be assigned in your project. You have workflow scheme, where you can have multiple workflows assigned to a scheme, and your scheme is assigned to your project. And what that allows you to do is assign a scheme to multiple projects. So if you have 4 or 5 similar projects, for example, a proof of concept project, which grows into a full application project, those can both share the scheme. Well, now all of your priority levels can also be placed into a scheme. Subtasks, drag and drop. Reordering subtasks in your project has always been a manual click and move. So you go to the More tab, you say move, you move it around. Now you can just drag and drop. Place it a new location on the tag, just like you do with a full-on task. You can now in your, and I'm talking about inside the Kanban style or window, you can actually do the same thing with your subtasks. You can still use the supplied arrows if you'd like, but you can do that with the drag and drop. I know I'm going a little fast, but we've got a lot to cover, and they're all short like this, so I'm just going to keep tearing through as best I can. So the next thing that they've done is in the Kanban boards and the similar boards, they've implemented optimistic transitions, is what they're calling it. So think of it this way. Previously, when you would move a task from column A to column B, right, from to do to in progress, you would drag it and drop it, and the system process would go a little like this. Is this allowed? Is this within constraint? And are the necessary other requirements all met? Then it would complete the action on the back end. And if something failed, it would come back and tell you. So when you're doing 1 or 2 tasks that way, it's not such a difficult thing. But if you're doing 10 or 15, that could be a lot on the back end, as well as each of those throwing a little message up in your face saying, you know, there's a problem with this one, there's a problem with that one, so on and so on. So the implementation that they made was, you're not going to move the task unless it's ready. We're going to give you the benefit of the doubt, for example. In that benefit of the doubt, what we're going to do then is we're going to say, we're going to go ahead and move it and then do all those back-end checks. The nice thing is that with 1 or 2 tickets, you're still going to have a fairly instantaneous, just like before, it's going to be fairly instantaneous. But when you're doing 15 or 20 tasks at a time, it will be visually instantaneous still, because it's going to move them and then it's going to go do all the background checking. All right, the next thing, you all won't have such a view into this from the back end. This one is more for the administrators. But the application links page is completely overhauled. They've changed the links experience. They've changed how the links are built. They've given you diagnostic tools as to what the application links problems are. Lots of things that there are several changes to this page. Now, what this page does is in the upper left-hand corner of all of your products, Jira, Confluence, and Stash, there's three lines. Inside those 3 lines, it gives you links to all of the Jira products. Links from Confluence over to Jira and Stash. Links from Stash over to Jira and Confluence. Links from Jira over to Confluence and Stash. Those are the application links. Those links handle a bunch of things. They handle intercommunication for tickets associating pages in Confluence. They handle tickets being able to pull from the repository the history of a commit. They handle the login schema. So when you log in to Jira, to Confluence or Stash, it passes back the login to Jira. So you only manage one username and password. All of that is incorporated into the application link. And having made a complete overhaul of it is a good thing. It's a good thing. It was complicated before. It's still a little complicated, but they really made it a lot easier and giving you a lot of, again, the diagnostic tools. The next piece is events for linked issues. So there's different ways to enact an event. You've got webhooks, you've got pre and post actions in a workflow, in a step in a workflow. And in all of these different elements, all the different ways you can create an event, events now have the ability to link and unlink issues. They can create and delete an issue link. So for example, if you have an issue, you've got a ticket that the workflow spins off another ticket in the event that this happens, you can now create a link between those 2 tickets. Where before, it would be 2 independent tickets, unless you were creating a child ticket or a sub task, which maybe you don't want to do. We had a situation before where we had 3 different projects all working, or 3 different Jira projects all working the same NDI project, because there were 3 entirely different aspects of existence. We eventually accumulated all of that into one, but at the beginning, we had events that would kick off the creation of a new ticket, duplicating the primary ticket into another environment. Now we can have an issue link that connects those 2 tickets together in the event that we've spawned another ticket. Under the security and performance components, they've done a lot of things. I only listed 4 primary ones here. On the 4 primary ones, we've got the iframe embeds have been limited so that we can counteract clickjacking. They've fixed duplicate issues where tickets were being created in duplicate, issues were being created in duplicate when the email system would be pulling a ticket out of email for creation. For some reason, it would often create multiples based on that same email incident. There were cases, depending on the width of the text in a column on the sprint and backlog windows, where your horizontal scroll bar would be lost, or your vertical scroll bar would be lost if you had extending text. They've also patched a whole bunch of security vulnerabilities. Well, that's a difficult word to say. All right, I think that's it for the Jira stuff. So now onto the Confluence stuff. Some of the Confluence stuff is really exciting. This first one is my favorite. you have true and honest collaborative editing. I used it today. It works fantastic. You can see who's editing the page with you and watch their changes right next to you. You get a cursor that has them associated with a color and their icon in the upper right beside your cursor, and you can watch the two cursors move. Changes are automatically saved now. You still have to hit the save button to commit those changes, but changes are automatically saved. So if your machine implodes right in the middle of an edit, you're not going to lose what you were doing. The other benefit is that there's a paused implementation of the changes. So basically, you can come back and publish, for example. Let's see. You have a different page now between viewing and editing. You're still editing in the same WYSIWYG editor, but you can view the changes before they get published. If you have a set of changes in, you can go straight in after the fact. So for example, you make a bunch of changes, you're working on something, and you just leave it and you come back and you reopen that page. It's going to say, you have a draft pending. Would you like to publish it or update it further and then publish it, or delete it completely? So you go in and you say, I'd like to update it further. It opens the draft, you continue working on it, and then you publish it. Again, there's no limit to the number of days between, because all of those versions are saved for as long as you need them, until you actually go and say, delete this draft or publish this draft. After you come back to your work and you've left it in a draft state, you can come back, hit edit, and any of the unpublished changes will be there. And I don't know why drafts to resume working on it is bold like that. It's not supposed to be. Typo. I'll show you how that collaborative editing works. It's really sweet. So you can now copy and delete a page hierarchy inside of Confluence. So for example, if you have a page called Meeting and you want to be able to roll that page and all of its subs, all of its children pages, to the next project. So say, for example, you're going from Project A POC to Project A beta, then you can copy in one bulk the parent page and all of its children to the other project, or to another location within your current project. It's also very helpful for doing things like what I've been doing is using a Confluence setup, a Confluence generic project as a template. And then when we create a new project in the company, I replicate that generic project into a new project and then turn that project over as the product project. So the project space. Well, we used to have to do that with a plugin, an external paid for plugin. Now it is built into Confluence. I don't no longer have to pay for an extra tool to do the same job. So kudos Atlassian. All right, the Bitbucket changes. I'm going to tear through these. Of course, I've been tearing through everything so far. I'm going to tear through these pretty quickly because they're only going to affect a certain number of people. So the biggest one, obviously, is we're no longer using Stash. We're now using Bitbucket. It is the same product. It's just a new name. You now have committer verifications. You have improved integrations with the Bitbucket server. One note is that the server 5 and above no longer supports AJP connections, which is your reverse proxy connections. You can now do GPG commits, signed commits. So that's a PGP style encryption, and your signature is a validated signature. So you can literally sign your commits now. Pull request deletions for open or declined pull requests. Management can actually go in and delete any open and unvalidated or declined pull requests. You have project level repository administration, where before your administration was done at the project level and then at the repository level. You had to do it all the way down. Now you only have to do it at the project level, and it'll flow down if that's how you have it set up, which is nice because you only have to set it once now, and it affects everything inside, all the repositories inside the project, rather than having to do it for each individual one. You now have the ability to create a Jira issue from a pull request comment. So you can actually type into the pull request the syntax to fire off a Jira issue creation. More webhooks have been added for various types of integration. You've got personal access tokens now. And Rebase for Bitbucket is available. We don't have it, but it is available. We can certainly get it if it's something that we need. Okay. So here is the resources that were used. Obviously, all I did was tear through all of the server notes. I mean, all the release notes for all the various server components that we did. But I thought this was interesting because if we're looking back at the versions that we ran through, right, from 6.4.5 to 7.6.0, and from 5.9 to 6.5, and from 3.1 to 5.5, and we look at that release notes, there's quite a few versions that we upgraded, and unfortunately had to do each step. We couldn't just go from 6.5 to 7.6. We had to go to 7.0 and then to 7.2 and then to 7.5, and so on and so on and so on. And the same thing for Confluence, the same thing for Stash. These are not cumulative updates, but we have accumulated the updates. All right, if you have any questions, now's a great time to ask. Here's all the information about this, this brown bag and the NDI training in brown bags space. You can get to that. And then here's this particular brown bag again. And this link here takes you straight to the brown bag page, where you'll be able to get a copy of this video as well as this PowerPoint presentation. That's done. So let me drop all of this. Let me switch over to, don't need that right now. That is the NDI mail. And here we're going to Jira, not test, and Confluence. Okay, so one of the first things that I want to show, and we're not going to be in here for very long, but one of the first things I want to show is the collaborative editing. So I'm scrolling through to the brown bag page for this particular presentation here. Maximize that so you can see all the way around. All right, so we're just in a Confluence space, right? We have all the pieces that we need. Here's the Jira changes. Here's all the notes about them. And these notes are taken primarily from the descriptions of the release notes. Some of them were editorialized by me to make it a little more clearer, because a lot of the release notes were in a bit more text speak. But anyway, so one of the things, one of my favorite tools right now is the ability to multi-edit or collaboratively edit. So I simply went into my space here. Okay, so here's my Confluence space. And automatically you can see right here floating is my profile picture and a plus button. And if you click that plus button, what it does is it allows you to invite other people to edit this page with you. So you type in names here, and the names come right up. out of the user base. You can give them a little note here. Hi, Lindsay. This is a test of the collab editing in Confluence. And then you hit, let's see. All right. And you hit invite, and there. She's going to get the invite. And then if she pops in, her picture will come up over here. She'll be assigned a color, and her cursor will start moving around. You have update because we are currently in open and active. But if I make a change in here, so I'm going to come up here, add some text right here at the bottom. Okay. You preview your changes. There it is. There's my page the way it appropriately sits, and you can click edit again. So that's one of the new features is your edit and preview components here. One of the other things that I really like is before you hit update, here is your what did you change notice. You don't have to go in anymore and do it in the background. You can say, I clarified this or that, right? But let's say you're not ready to save this, you're not ready to publish this, just close it and move on. You can keep it as a draft, discard all your changes. If you click show changes, it'll show you exactly what was changed. Okay, obviously that one line is the only thing I changed. There it is right there in big green text. This line was added, this line was removed, and formatting. Okay, so I'm going to keep this draft. And it has got unpublished changes now. So that's pretty much it. When you come back into this, you simply edit. And there are your changes. And when you're done, if you want to discard them, you hit close, and it'll ask you if you want to discard them or keep them. When you hit update, it will finalize the update and your changes get made live. And then the error warning is gone now. All right, so I'm going to clean that back up again. Say update and put it back. All right. So let's head over to Jira. So on Jira, we're going to start right here. These are your application links, okay? Just so that you can see them. You can probably see already that there's a couple of new icons running around. Things are missing up here, like Service Desk is no longer up here. It's here now. So your project is organized by type. So you've got software projects and service desks and business projects. So we're going to click on service desks. The Jira issues service desk. We have new icons over here as well. So your project icons can change. I tend to apply specific project icons, and in the upgrade it overwrote them. So I'm going to go back through if I can and try and reapply the ones that I had created for that particular project, so they appear appropriately. Now we're in the service desk, and you can see that it's changed a little bit. Your side windows, your side navigation is slightly different. One of the things that I did like, your access to the knowledge base is directly right here now. You don't have to go hunt for it anymore. Boom, there it is. How nice. And then click to go to your Confluence page. One of the other things is raise a request, and it jumps you straight into the customer portal, which of course this particular customer portal that I've built has the knowledge base links right in the front. Here's how you create tickets. And again, you remember what we were saying earlier about having a default case type, defaulting to bug now. What we were doing in the past was prompting the user to just define the case type in advance. So this would open a project or space case type. This would open a user account case type, an issue case type, a question case type. Okay. Still have links to your customers, your queues, and your reports. That has replaced the people links. You had a link up there called people. That's gone now. You can invite new team members right off the bat. So it's that part of it has changed. Let me see if we can find a project that has a board in it. All right, so here we go. Here's an active board. So this view hasn't really changed. When we go into the backlog, you'll see versions and epics rolled up just like before. And again, your epics and versions are now list items. They're no longer cards. You can grab an element, drop it right on an epic or right on a version to associate it. Okay. And then if you read this right here, this is a new notice to the PM that says you can now add your goal for your sprint. So to do that, you just click right here, add your sprint goal. Okay. And there's your sprint goal. Clicking the view workload by assignee. And here's where you'll see the issues assigned to them, the story points assigned to those issues, and then the roll-up of that time in a remaining time estimate. That's available right here. The 3 dots beside the people associated with that project. All right, I'm trying to think of what else we ran through. There was so much going on. I think that about covers it. So stop the video and kick the straight video back up. And I think that about covers it. So if you have any questions, please feel free to give me a call. Hit me on IM, Hangouts, email, and we'll go through it. We did have a bunch of, there were several, let me get the list out for you here. There were several Jira add-ons that had to be removed. They shouldn't be a problem for you, but if you notice something going a little awry, give me a notice and I will make sure that it's not one of the add-ons that we removed. The list currently is the Epic SumUp, the clone project, which is the one that I used, JQL Tricks, Service Rocket, Jira Utilities, and the other two, Jira Suite Utilities. That was the other one. So all of those are currently disabled. Jira Suite Utilities, we're running actually on a trial version until I can get it paid for. I'll get the license put in. That one's probably going to be just fine. But the others, they were either no longer available for the new version because we are now at the most current version of the Jira and Confluence software, and the add-on vendors haven't caught up with us yet. So some of those add-ons were paid and not being used. Epic SumUp, for example, we weren't using it. Clone Project, I was the only one using it, and now Jira and Confluence both have cloning built in, so don't really need it. That pretty much covers it. Thank you all for joining. Thank you for taking the time out. And if you have any questions, like I said, just hit me up. All right. End.